Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Yevamos, Parakir, chapter 10. We are going to be finishing Mishna Aleph, Mishnah 1. So we're starting from the words Rabbi Yossi Omer. Now, the Mishnah until now listed a number of consequences that come from the fact that this woman got married, even though she was allowed to. She got married based on one witness, which was supposed to work with a combination of the one witness and her investigations. And when the husband shows up, the first husband shows up, that means that things were not done properly, not done well enough, and there are a number of penalties that are applied to her, to the husband. The whole list here in the notes of the art scroll comes out with 16 consequences that come out because of this. 16, that's a lot. Now, this section of the Mishnah is going to show some opinions that disagree with some of the consequences mentioned before. Rabbi Yossi says, "Ksubasa al nichsei bala harishain." Her ksuba is on the property of her first husband. That means that before we said that she loses her ksuba, even from the first husband who she's actually married to, she loses her ksuba and all the benefits of it. Rabbi Yossi says, nope. Ksubasa al nichse ba'alei harishin. Her ksuba is paid by the estate of her first husband. According to Rabbi Yossi, since she did not really commit adultery intentionally, she still receives the ksuba from her first husband. Okay? Now, from the second husband, there's no ksuba. There's no question from the second husband, because the second husband was never really married to her. So he has no obligations to her. However, when it comes to the first husband, we say that the ksuba, she can still collect her ksuba from him. And that is because of the fact that we say that, we know that perhaps things didn't go the way they should have, but according to Rabbi Yossi, she is not a intentional adulteress, and therefore she does not lose her ksuba from her first husband, from the man who she's actually married to. Now, Rabbi Yossi only mentions the ksuba. There are a number of other things that were mentioned beforehand, and there's no indication that Rabbi Yossi argues on the other ones. He is saying that she doesn't lose her ksuba, which I would assume that the other parts that are connected to the ksuba, this is my assumption, I did not see this anywhere, but I would assume that all the other provisions of the ksuba that we said before she loses because she doesn't have a ksuba, according to Rabbi Yossi, she would get. If she gets the ksuba, she gets those things too. That's my assumption. But Rabbi Yossi's focus is the ksuba. He makes no mention of all the other consequences mentioned before. Rebbe Lazar says, Harishain, the first husband, meaning the husband who she is really married to, Zakai b'mitziasa, he has the rights to the objects that she finds, and to her wages, and to annul her vows. The first opinion of the Mishnah was that because of what happened, he also loses his rights that he has over her, right? We said before that he gets that the halacha is that that a man gets the rights to his, if his wife finds out that the general halacha, if a married woman finds a lost object, it belongs to her husband. The reason that the sages instituted that was because we want to make sure there's no friction between them. The first opinion of the Mishnah said, in this case where they're not supposed to stay married, it's okay if there's friction between them. She doesn't lose, therefore he doesn't have the rights to her lost object. According to Rabbi Lazar says, he did nothing wrong, he does not lose his rights. And therefore, although Rabbi Lazar doesn't necessarily agree with Rabbi Yossi about whether she gets the ksuba or not, but at the end of the day, and there's no question either that he has to divorce her, but nonetheless, he does not lose his benefits. He did not do anything wrong here, and therefore the benefits that he gets, he doesn't lose out. Therefore, her lost objects belong to him. Her wages belong to him. Annulling her vows, he has the right. He has the power to do that. So, although Rebbe Lazar is not disagreeing that he has to divorce her and that this marriage is not meant to stay intact, nonetheless, the benefits that he had before, he doesn't lose out on because he didn't do anything wrong. Now, that's Rebbe Lazar's opinion. Rebbe Shimon says, Rebbe Shimon says, before we said that if, let's say, the first husband dies without children, there is no yibum to be done, only chalitza. Says Reb Shimon that a cohabitation, meaning the actual performance of yibum, or giving her chalitza from the brother of the first, will exempt the co-wife. Meaning, let's say her first husband, the guy who disappeared and came back, he had 2 wives. Okay? And one of the wives went and got married based on one witness. And that's when he came back. So now, what happens if that person dies without children? Now he has 2 wives that fell for yibum. He's got the 2 wives. We know the halacha is that if you do yibum or chalitza on one wife, the other one's free. According to Reb Shimon, that yibum may be done on this woman who got married based on one witness. Yibum may be done to her. You can do if you don't want to do yibum, you do a chalitza, and whatever you do is going to affect the co-wife. The point, Reb Shimon, is that yibum here is full. There is no penalty. There is no effect on yibum from what this woman did. Being that she did not commit adultery straight out, we say that what happens after the husband's dead, there's no consequences for that. Once the husband's dead, there's no more consequences. We look at him as his wife, which she really was, and therefore yibum can be done on her. There's a mitzvah of yibum. We allow the yibum, and whatever happens to her, whether it's yibum or chalitza, will affect the co-wife. The point being, according to Shimon, that there is no effect on yibum from what this woman did. If the real husband died, then without children, you can even perform yibum. The second husband, there's nothing to talk about. The second husband is not really her husband, so there's nothing to talk about there about anything with yibum. But the first husband, according to Shimon, no consequences regarding yibum. Ve'ein avala b'menu mamzer. Rabbi Shimon also adds that the child born from the first husband, meaning we said before that let's say after she becomes forbidden to this first husband, because the sages put a penalty on it. The sages said she's forbidden. She's considered adulteress. She can't go back to the first husband. Okay. The Chachamim, according to the first opinion of the Mishnah, the sages added that if she were to go back to that man, have a child from that man, that child would be a mamzer. It's a mamzer midrabanan. There's no reason according to Torah law for the child to be a mamzer. She's actually married to him. But all part of the consequences and the penalties here, the Chachamim said, according to the first opinion of the Mishnah, the child would be a mamzer. Were she should become pregnant from her real husband, who she has to get a divorce from. Reb Shimon says, nope, the kid's fine. She's not supposed to go back to him. She's forbidden to go back to him. But were she go back to him, become pregnant from him, and have a child, the child will not be a mamzer. Now, at this point, we are done with the discussion, or I should say we're done. At this point, the Mishnah is done with the discussion about the woman who got married based on one witness. And we have the consequences mentioned. We have the dissenting opinions. As Abartunura says, we don't follow these dissenting opinions. We follow the first opinion. And all the consequences that mentioned before, according to halacha, are applicable. Now the Mishnah says like this. V'mnisa shaloi b'shus. If she got married without permission. Now, without permission doesn't mean she has no permission. It means she got married without the permission of Beis Din. When you have one witness, if a woman gets married based on one witness, that is because the Beis Din, the sages, allowed her to do so. But let's say she gets married without a need for permission from the sages. Meaning, there were 2 witnesses that said the man died. 2 witnesses say the man died. That's unquestionable. That works. Now, this may have to go to the Beis Din, of course. They have to be investigated. They have to be asked questions. They have to make sure that the witnesses are actually true witnesses. But at the end of the day, once the witnesses are checked out, there's no question anymore about her ability to get married. There's no doubt. There's no question. She can 1,000,000% get married. And therefore, the Mishnah says, if she got married without permission of the Beis, it means she didn't need a special permission from the sages. She has every full-fledged right, according to Torah law, because there are 2 witnesses to get married. Muteres lachzerlei. Then she can go back to her first husband. Because in the case where there are 2 witnesses that said that the man died, then she's considered an anusa. She's considered someone that was beyond her control about what happened. And when that happens to a woman, as long as she's not married to a Kohen, she can go back to her first husband. So therefore, in the situation where it was 2 witnesses that allowed her to get married, in that situation, and there's no question then, there's nothing to talk about her ability to get married, to get remarried. If the guy shows up, she's considered that what happened was beyond her control, and therefore she can go back to her first husband again as long as he's not a Kohen. If he's a Kohen, then even a woman who would be violated, a woman who was raped, if she's a wife of a Kohen, she can't stay married to him. And so too, she can't eat truma from her father's house if that would be relevant. But as long as we're not talking about a Kohen, the Mishnah is saying if she got married based on two witnesses, she can go back to him, which means everything is back to normal.
What happens to the...
All right, let's move on. Bye.
Huh?
Bye. Okay. Now, the Chofetz Chaim was talking about how it is a more serious sin to speak lashon hara about a Jew in front of a non-Jew. All the more so if he informs upon a fellow Jew. That means he went to the government, he informed on him to try to get him arrested by the government. If he goes and informs on a Jew in front of non-Jews, his sin is greater, that he can't be forgiven. Such a person is called a malshin. A malshin means an informant. An informant means he's not just telling a story to Goyim, he's actually telling a story to Goyim to actually get this guy into very direct, serious trouble from them. The dina yishavela pikairis v'kaifim b'atar b'tchias hamesim she'inim kala v'heim enam kalim b'shin b'sechas Rosh Hashanah. A person who is a malshin falls into the same category as an apikairis, as a heretic. He is out of the fold. Person has to be very, very careful from these kinds of things. Someone who goes and informs on a Jew in front of them. It's considered as if he has raised his hand and as if he has cursed and shamed and raised his hand against the Torah. That's how serious it is. And the Chofetz Chaim is mentioning it because, unfortunately, throughout Jewish history, there have been those kinds of problems of Jews informing upon Jews, and therefore it's not just merely lashon hara. It's a very, very serious form of lashon hara, a very serious form, and therefore the Chofetz Chaim is bringing it down here as he has all possibilities of what a person has to be careful of when it comes to speaking about another Jew. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.